Hi, welcome to C3's Discover the Difference podcast. I'm Lindsay Patton, and I will be co-hosting with Gabe. Today on our show, we have Christian Espinosa. He is a former Air Force veteran. He is an author of the book Smartest Person in the Room, and he's a cybersecurity expert. But beyond being your typical IT guy, he also has done 2 of the 7 summits, and he's participated in 24 Ironmans. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the podcast.
Maybe you could start a little bit about your background and how you got into cybersecurity in the first place. Was that something from your time at the Air Force, or what was it that got you interested in this topic?
Yes, I got into cybersecurity. I did cybersecurity in the Air Force. It's called information assurance. So I protected classified data in the military. And when I was transitioning out of the Air Force after about 6 years, I kind of looked at like where the industry was going, and I realized IT was important, but I also knew cybersecurity was kind of direction to go. So I focused on IT with an emphasis on cybersecurity. And then when I got out of the military, I ended up doing way more cybersecurity, basically, with a little bit of IT. But I always wanted to do hacking and ethical hacking and penetration testing. So it's kind of like the direction I pointed my career. And that's what I ended up doing as a freelancer. Then I started a company in 2014. I sold that company, and I knew now the new company. That's primarily what we do.
Got it. So Can you take us back a little bit, even beyond, like what is it that drove you to get into the Air Force and serve this country? Like, what was the impetus in the first place?
So I grew up like extremely poor. I moved from Riverside, California. My mom and stepfather and my 2 half brothers. When I was 12, we moved to Arkansas, and we lived in a small trailer on food stamps, on WIC, where you get like government cheese and government milk. And at school, I'd get the lunch card to get the free lunch. It was extreme poverty. And my mother was addicted to pain meds. So my childhood was very chaotic and not very stable. And I wanted to do whatever I could do to get out of there. So I applied to like every university I could apply to. I applied to all the military academies. And my whole goal was to get out of Arkansas, to get out of my childhood, really. Right. And I got accepted to all 3 military academies, and decided to go to the Air Force. The brochure looked cooler, basically, in Colorado Springs. It wasn't as cool as it made it look like in the brochure, but...
Was that because you wanted to fly, or
I wanted to fly, yeah. I watched Top Gun, and Top Gun's Navy, I know, but
yeah.
I thought it'd be better to live on land than an aircraft carrier, so I thought I'll go to the Air Force and fly in the Air Force. And that was my scholarship out of Arkansas, and also my kind of career path, at least for a while, was the military.
Got it.
Yeah.
That probably took you to a lot of different places, though. Do you have any that were your favorite, where you traveled to?
It's interesting. I wasn't sent that many places when I was at active duty. I was sent to, I went to school in Colorado Springs, in college there, Air Force Academy. Then I went to Biloxi, Mississippi for tech school for a while, for communications. And then I went to San Antonio, and then I went to St. Louis. And that was about it. When I got out of the military, I was a defense contractor, and I traveled like Europe every month and a bunch of other places.
Wow.
So most of my travel
was actually out of the military.
Was out of the military as a contractor for the government. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how did obviously getting out of poverty and getting into the military, how did you translate that into what you're doing today? Like, why was it technology or IT that got you in? How did you end up doing that in the Air Force?
Yeah, I wanted to fly jets in the Air Force, but when I graduated high school, I remember reading like a U.S. News report or something that said if you have an engineering degree with an MBA, you're the most marketable. And coming from my background where I didn't have a lot of options, I thought I need to be marketable. So in the Air Force Academy, I majored in engineering, and I was pilot qualified, but the 2 years before I graduated, they cut all the pilot slots. So I lost my pilot slot, and then the year I graduated, they cut them again. So I would have had to reapply after I got out of the academy and graduated. So I decided not to reapply and focused on the engineering skill. And then I went into IT, cybersecurity, and then I got the MBA later on. Yeah.
I appreciate you being so open and vulnerable about your, childhood and everything that kind of led you to that. How did you respond to a total change of environment? Now you have more militant structure, routine. That's my assumption as an outsider, but was that something that you responded to and really thrived in, or was it what you expected?
Gonna go from chaos
To complete structure.
Yeah, so
Rigid.
it's interesting. I thought I was like pretty smart in Arkansas. I was like number 2 in my class. And I was pretty internally driven, and I was pretty disciplined despite my chaotic background.
Yeah.
I wanted to put structure on my own life. I decided to live with my grandparents my senior year, for instance, to like have more structure. And when I went to the Air Force Academy, I realized I wasn't that smart. People there had taken like Calculus 4. I had taken like Calculus 1. And I didn't like the structure. It was too much. The military environment, being told to do all the time, was a little too much for me. That's probably why I only lasted like 6 years in the military. I had some great leaders, but I had some that I just didn't want to listen to them tell me what to do the rest of my life.
Right.
So it's a balance, right? But I had a lot of great experiences.
Is that the fight between being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I was gonna say, right?
Is that the entrepreneurial spirit that was the challenge of being told what to do?
Yeah, I think so, because I worked for a couple commercial companies after I got out of the military. And it's the same thing. It's like, I loved it at first because it was a lot less structured than the military. But then later on, it's like, I'm having someone tell me what to do all the time. And I felt like my purpose was greater than having someone tell me. I felt like I could build something. And I felt like that would be more challenging for me, and something where I would be forced to grow at a higher level if I had to build something, solve problems, and hire people and deal with like the challenges of having a staff.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the draw of the entrepreneurship for me. Plus, I'm very creative as well. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about purpose? Because you mentioned that. Like, what was it that drove you to go and start, the company in 2014?
Yeah. So it's been this journey for me, and I think growing up in the chaotic environment and all that, I wanted to feel significant. And the way I felt significant back then was by being smarter than people, what I thought was smarter, better at stuff than people. And that was my significance. I think we all want to be significant at something. So that desire to be significant and achieve a lot got me to a certain point in my life. It got me to where I was doing freelance work. And I've done a lot of work on myself, and I realized, this trying to be better than everybody and being smarter than everybody, this sort of me against the world attitude, was holding me to glass ceiling. And after I had done the freelance work for a while, I realized, I'm sort of like stuck here, this glass ceiling. And what I need to do is form a company, grow that, because it's a different skill set than being a solopreneur or a freelancer. Grow that and really put myself to a test and see if I can get rid of the me against the world attitude and be like, it's me and the world. We're together. We're no different, right? And I felt like if I have a team, I have to have the vision. I have to get them to follow me in a way, and have to have a more collaborative persona than the kind of me against the world. I can do it better than everybody else. So it was like sort of an intentional step to force myself to grow. It was like sink or swim sort of mindset I had back then.
That's super introspective.
Yeah,
to
I
be
can
able to willing to do that.
It's funny as I can really relate with that.
Yeah.
Because I had that, and when you mentioned, there was another, I was number 2 in my class. Like the thing I was thinking is, how do I be number 1?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I, similarly, thinking is, so what was it that created that shift? Because it's not easy to shift from, hey, I got to be the smartest person in the room, to demonstrate that I'm good enough and I'm smart, and I'm successful, to, hey, now I can create something with bringing people together and get a lot farther, because you mentioned that glass ceiling, how you can, doing it by yourself, you have a ceiling, but
right.
bringing people together. What was the pivot, or what was that? Was there a moment, or just something that happened gradually?
I don't think there was a specific moment. I've done a lot of work on myself, like having different coaches, doing neurolinguistic programming, going to like Tony Robbins events, different things where I feel like through my journey, I've taken the steps to see things through a different lens that I may have normally seen them through, a different model of the world. So I think some of that, and then also with freelance work, to be honest, I got like super bored. I was making like lots of money, traveling the world, taking 6 months off, and I felt like I'm stagnating. I'm not growing, and I value growth. So I felt like I was bored, and that was a big contributing. I always think of like maybe to my downfall to some degree is like, what's the next thing to do? What's the next step? For me to grow or for me to learn more. And that was a big impetus for me starting my own business as well. It's like the freelance work got kind of boring. Plus all the other perspectives I'd heard through the work I'd done, the masterminds I've joined and things like that as well.
Yeah.
Does that also play into this super athlete, super adventurer personality? How many Ironmans have you done?
I finished 24 Ironman Triathlons.
Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
so most people like think about could they ever do an Ironman or
Good
even
point.
a half an Ironman, and you've done 24.
Yeah.
I think some of the other activities I saw is you're a skydiver.
Yeah. I like to live on the edge.
Yeah. What else are you doing that's on the edge?
I like to race cars. If I go to tracks sometimes, I like to climb mountains. Like mountaineering. I've done 2 of the 7 summits.
Oh wow.
But yeah,
I
I think,
saw you're like into like some avalanche organization.
yeah, I've done avalanche training,
Avalanche
so I
training.
can be more prepared to manage the risk if I'm on a mountain and there's an avalanche
Yes,
and things
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like it's good to be prepared.
It really resonates because what I hear is you shifting from a more fixed mindset, right, to a growth mindset and moving into an entrepreneur and sort of saying, I want to create and I can grow and I can be better and what's the next best thing. I'd be curious to know if there was you mentioned a lot of great organizations and tools that you used. Is there one book that you're like, if someone should read something, this really helped me as an entrepreneur wanting to like take that first step to say, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to leave money and a corporate job and just say, I'm going to bet on myself. Is there any particular book or books that you love that you would recommend?
Well, you mentioned mindset.
Yeah.
So I'd read Carol Dweck's book on mindset.
That's a great book.
And for me, like right when I started my company, Alpine Security, like in 2014, we took this job as medical device manufacturer. I made the mistake of sending like what I thought was my best technical employee to interview, and he screwed it up. And, like cussed in front of the people, and we almost lost the whole contract. So the only way to save that gig was for me to go do the work myself. They said,
Right.
this guy can never do it. And ironically, it was like a 45-minute commute every day for me. I listened to that book on Audible. So ironically, the thing that made me sort of shift my mindset was that situation that happened to me. And I don't know what happened, why I listened to Carol Dweck's book, but I listened to it when I was driving back and forth every day. And that sort of like really, I guess, drove home like fixed versus growth mindset.
Right.
I started thinking, do I really have a fixed or do I have a growth? And I wrote about that in my book as well a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, mindset's like step 2 of my methodology.
Right.
So what was the answer? Did you have a fixed or a growth?
As much as we like to think we have a growth, me too, I think I have a growth, but I think there's certain aspects that are fixed. Because if you look at my like life history, and I've had this conversation with friends of mine, like you've done one Ironman, kind of know what to expect. You do another one, you kind of know what to expect, right? So as an example, so I've tried to branch off and do things like mountaineering or skydiving or scuba diving or survival training and instructing survival training, things that are different. But sometimes you can get into the pattern of thinking, I have a growth mindset, but it's only about this one particular aspect of your life.
Sure.
And I try to like step back and zoom back. I like to call it condor vision, like a condor, like looking at your life and think, what other areas of my life do I have maybe a fixed mindset about?
Right.
Because we can say, for athletics, I'm growth minded, but if my company is always the same, it never changes, or my health never changes, my relationships never change, then I've got a growth in one aspect, not the other ones.
Right.
So it's important
Fixed
to
in
zoom
some
out
areas.
and look at
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
interesting because especially like entrepreneurs are thinking about growing in their business, and then how does that reflect back in their life and other things that they're doing? Is that kind of what
100%.
you're saying?
100%. Yeah, we got to think about it from our life as a holistic whole, not just like these two elements of the set.
One slice of pie of the whole thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Yeah. I love that.
So you do a lot of coaching too, right?
I do a fair amount of coaching, yeah.
So how are you coaching for a growth mindset within your companies or other companies?
So a lot of people get coaching with like therapy confused. For one, therapy is like working on the past and resolving like past traumas. Coaching is getting someone to move forward in life. So the whole idea is getting out of them like what they view as a compelling future, and then what is in the way of them achieving that compelling future. And one of the challenges with coaching is most people know what they don't want in life, but very few people know what they do want. If you don't know what you want, it's hard to like make the space or take the right steps to get there. It's easy to avoid the things you don't want, but then you kind of just wander around. So with coaching, we try to get people to understand what they want with clarity and then figure out a path to get there. And typically it's letting go of who you are and change your identity to become somebody that would achieve this thing you want to achieve. And that's a big pill for a lot of people to swallow. They want to cling on to their identity, and their ego wants them to stay the same, but then you're always going to get the same results.
It's the timing is so unique. We just did a leadership workshop with our group, about 20 individuals, with Vaughn and her Work Smart Advantage program. And it was coaching and mentoring and the differences.
Yeah.
But the reason I say that is one of the things they talked about is oftentimes, if someone's coming to us, is differentiating between, am I mentoring them or am I coaching? And in the coaching world, am I a co-pilot or am I pilot? And they used actually a plane journey as sort of a way to kind of talk through coaching. And one of the things was, we often come from a place of the things I don't want to do or don't want to achieve.
Right.
And so one of the key things was, how do we say, what are you really looking to do? What are you looking to achieve? And kind of going through those steps and measurements. And so I think that it just resonates with even what we're doing, but just taking that time from a coaching standpoint to really understand and paint, like, what does the forward vision look like? Because oftentimes, to your point, we're guided by the bumpers and the barriers of the things we don't want to do, and we try to figure out a workaround, right? Instead of identifying, here's where I want to go, and then what are the steps we think we can get there and at least make progress forward.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I mean, even today, like I do a lot of exercises and reflect a lot to think where I want to go with clarity. But I've got like a lot of things going through my head, and it's hard to like get down to like the specific thing I want to accomplish by specific point in time. If you have crystal clear clarity, then the obstacles go out of the way.
Right.
You know why you want to do it, when you want to do it. You have the feel and the tug to do it. So those obstacles kind of melt away because you just don't worry about those anymore because you have clarity on what you want to accomplish.
Yep.
And that by itself is, I think, a very useful exercise to get that clarity on what you want to achieve. Because most people, like you said, they know what they don't want to do, but not what they want to achieve.
Yeah.
So how do you help people find that, what they want to achieve? How do you guide them to that? Is it the same way you guide yourself?
It's a little bit about the same way I guide myself, but I think everyone's different. Usually people come to coaching for a reason. They're not satisfied with their life, typically. And they go to therapy because they want to resolve something from the past. Coaching, they're not satisfied with their life, and they want a different perspective. So through the right questions and the right kind of spurring of like their mindset and what they're thinking, you can often get people to have some moments where things click for them, and they're like, oh, the way they asked that question, or I asked the question, made me realize I don't want this, I want this, and this isn't the way. So it's a lot of like kind of exploration about somebody and curiosity, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
I like that. So one of the things that you're famous for is the book you wrote, Smartest Person in the Room.
Smartest person in the room.
Is that you, the smartest person in the room?
I hope
me.
not.
Yeah.
It's definitely Lindsay.
I used to want to be the smartest person in the room. Now I don't want to be this. I feel like as an entrepreneur or in business, I should definitely not be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
I want to surround myself by people that are smarter than me. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what was the impetus to write the book, and just kind of give like a quick, minute version on, what's the major theme in the Smartest Person in the Room book?
I wrote The Smartest Person in the Room based on my experience as an entrepreneur with my cybersecurity company, my first one. And I was super frustrated with the industry. I wanted to get out of the industry. I was so frustrated. I'm like, I can't stand working in this industry anymore. And I thought I could either get out and do real estate, which I do now, or something different, or I can try to like have an impact on the industry. So I zoomed out and thought, what are all the problems, or 99% of the problems I've had in my own company in cybersecurity? And there's a theme with all of them, and there's a theme with me too in the past. I was one of these people that had challenges. I was super brilliant, and the people in my company were super brilliant technically, but when it came to like people skills or life skills or emotional intelligence, it was lacking. And people are always looking, like we talked about being significant earlier, people always want to feel significant. In my industry, people feel significant by being, quote, smarter than somebody else. They're looking for opportunity to say, oh, you didn't know this, I know this, or looking for opportunity to talk over somebody's head. So when I realized all that in my company, that most of the problems I had were because my team didn't communicate well with clients, they talked over their head, and clients didn't understand what they were talking about, my team didn't collaborate well, that I thought, I need to resolve this in my company, because I don't want to be a company that just has transactions with people. I want to have relationships. So I worked to resolve it in my company over several years. We did different training, we did different workshops, and what ended up working is what I wrote about in the book. These 7 main steps I write about in the book. But that was my impetus. Yeah. I like to think of it in cybersecurity and a lot of industries. I'm a believer that we get what we tolerate. And we have this like high IQ individual with low EQ, so highly rational, intelligent, not a lot of people skills, but we tolerate it. So we get more and more and more of it. We even like make TV shows about it. Like it's a common thing. But I think everyone has room, if they have that growth mindset we talked about, to improve their emotional intelligence or people skills.
That really resonates with me. Recently we've traditionally had a third-party IT vendor, and we wanted to enhance our own experience for our employees and whatnot. And so we looked to hire IT for the first time, and we met with a few people in that space that were sort of experts. And the commonality was, how do we hire someone with the ability to work with our employee first, that had a good technical knowledge, but could probably be coached up or learn the technical space? Because, and I often say it, I'm like, explain this to me like you're my third grader. Talk to me with IT jargon that I can understand, because you can lose the room very quickly, to your point of, I want you to know how smart I am in this field, because I'm going to use jargon and acronyms and things. And then we're like, this just went over our head. But when someone can come in and really help you understand the strategy or what you're looking to do, there's such a benefit, I think, from our point of view as leaders, of saying this person can really help us in this unknown space, because IT is really such a niche, specific world that I found. And so I really love that you called that out in your book, and really helping people to say, hey, if you can just relate, connect with people, you'll be able to move whatever that project or, instance is forward. So I think that's, important that you obviously highlighted that in your book for others.
Yeah. And that, the thing about writing the book is I had to like reflect on my own life, and I realized I used to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I used to be significant by being smarter than somebody, quote smarter, talking over their head, looking for an opportunity to show that they didn't know what they're talking about. And I realized that this is like an epidemic in cybersecurity and in IT. And like I said, we just tolerate it. But people want to feel significant, and there's always this resistance about, well, I don't have to deal with people. That's like what people. That's what people in my company would tell me, and other people say. Well, I'm like, well, you probably have parents, don't you? You probably have children, a spouse. So if you learn these skills, like people skills or emotional intelligence, these skills have an infinite shelf life versus technical skills, which in a year may be obsolete.
Right.
So why not invest some time learning some of these skills that will serve you the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the book, there's 7 steps, right? What do you, out of those 7 steps, what are the most significant that, supports the EQ? That supports the EQ growth.
The most significant? I mean, I think they all play a role.
All 7.
Well, step 1 is awareness. I think that plays a big role. You have to be aware first, but I don't think knowledge is power. I think the ability to apply knowledge is power, and I try to make that clear in the book. One of the steps that gets the most attention is monotasking. That's step 4. Step 5. A lot of people think that multitasking is the right way to do things, especially in our society today. We have instant messages. We feel like we have to respond to something all the time. Whereas if you're monotasking and you use like time blocks on your calendar, you do one thing at a time, you're way more productive. Multitasking makes you busy. But the other thing with people, if you're monotasking, you're not thinking about something else, you're not checking your phone while you're talking to someone, you're more present.
Right.
So actually listening and picking up on what they're communicating with you, and you can respond more appropriately and build a better relationship.
Active listening, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Being present is so key. I struggle with that. I find, multitasking, I have a million things to get done. But when you really are listening actively with the intent to respond and not react, right? Just sort of talk to be engaged, that is huge. So I really like that step. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think what you said is an important distinction. A lot of us listen to something for something to agree or disagree with.
Right.
I think it's important if you're listening to someone to listen for insight, not just what you can agree or disagree with.
Right. And having that empathy. Sometimes you're
Right.
listening just to say, it's just for me to understand? Is this for me to engage? Am I here to help and provide guidance? It changes your response when you're active listening, right? And being present, I think, to your point, is one of the first steps to actually engage and absorb everything. Because nowadays, everything's at the tip of our fingertips, right? Information access. We want to check our phone, but listen and also work. And it just really changes your ability to be engaged by active listening and focusing on what you're intently trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. I'll go to dinner with my girlfriend and we'll be around other people. Like there'll be couples sitting there on their phones,
whole time.
not talking to each other at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
It's like so bizarre. It's like, why not be present with the person you're with? It's
I know.
it's so bizarre to me.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's something that, even as a parent with your kids,
That too.
to
Yeah.
because we get frustrated with our kids of being on the devices all the time, but then we're doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's
We're
like
not leading by
yeah,
great example.
setting
there.
the example.
Yeah.
But like, how do you take someone who's, obviously very intelligent in this space and convince them that things like active listening is important? What are you using? Are you using like statistics or this idea of monotexting when, I know like, I read a book about multitasking, and you actually lose 30% efficiency by multitasking.
Sure.
So are you using like statistics to help them understand that, or how do you really portray that to to someone so that they can start to
Get bought in
change?
on it.
They buy in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. With people in my company, not everybody wanted to buy into learning emotional intelligence. So some people had to be let go. They just didn't want to change. Other people, I would ask them, is your life exactly the way you want it to be right now? And typically people say no. I want more money, I want better relationships, I want better health, I want all this stuff, right? And often what's in the way is how they communicate that emotional intelligence and all the things that they need to improve on. So it's framing it like we talked about earlier with coach. It's a little bit of coaching, basically. Like, here's probably where you want to be. Here's where you are, and here's a path to get there. And that path involves not just improving your technical skills, but learning some life skills as well. And like I said, not everybody wanted to be on board with that, and I had to let people go. And then when I hired new people, I made sure they were a cultural fit. They met the core values, and they had the people skills. Those are the first three things I looked at before I ever once looked at the technical skills.
Right.
In the past,
Yeah.
it'd be like, are they technically competent?
Right.
Okay, I'm going to hire them. But those people, I have the problems with. So I flipped the script and look at all the other things ahead of time, and then only then we look at the technical skills.
Wow.
So I feel like you can teach the technical skills, but if someone doesn't want to learn or doesn't already demonstrate a propensity for people skills, they're probably not going to all of a sudden
Be
start
coachable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing with coaching. A lot of people
Yeah.
aren't coachable. People always think, well, you should be coaching everybody. It's like, not everybody's ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a unique challenge, right? Is someone being able to be willing to be adaptable, flexible. I see nowadays almost every job description is, looking for a talented, motivated individual that works in a fast-paced environment. You could like copy and paste that.
Yeah.
And, for us at C3, we really lead with those people skills, the culture and the family, because if you fit within that, to your point, we can work through the other barriers. We much rather have someone who wants to work, has a desire to work hard, is open to learning, ask questions, seek feedback. We can work and coach with that versus someone who, if they could just be really great at their job from a technical skill standpoint, but it's difficult for them to collaborate. It's difficult for them to be creative. It's difficult for them to, seek feedback or receive that. And that's can be more challenging with an employee than the opposite, right? Of someone being open and willing, to engage in all that. So it's interesting to hear, especially from such an IT expert, that resonates true with you building a company, versus kind of your customer service and all your kind of broad other type of positions. So that's validating, I think.
Well,
right?
it sounds like it's true, and all good businesses are really looking for, does this person fit their core values? Is it part of good culture?
Yeah.
Are they aligned in something that where we're trying to accomplish and feel like there's a purpose in what we're doing?
Yeah.
It sounds like in cybersecurity, well, I guess the question is you're mitigating risk, right? From helping businesses mitigate risk from cybersecurity.
Yes.
How does that match with your living on the edge personality?
I think they're aligned. I was talking about this earlier today. Cybersecurity is all about reducing risk. That's it. Bottom line. We like to make it out to be more than it is, but it's really about reducing risk. And it costs money to reduce the risk. There could be a value proposition like we're compliant with this versus somebody else. But it's really a cost center. It's about reducing risk. And when I reflect on my life, for some reason, the things I'm attracted to, if there's like a waiver involved where I could like lose my arm or like die, I'm like compelled to sign up. I'm like, give me the waiver, I'll sign it, And I think it's ironic that I'm all about doing risky things, but I also do the things to reduce the risk.
Right.
And I work in a business that's all about an industry that's about reducing risk as well. Because like with skydiving, people always say, well, skydiving is so freaking dangerous. I'm like, it is dangerous, but there's things you can do to reduce the risk. Like you can...
Like a second parachute?
You can have a second parachute. You can have an automatic activation device. So
tandem skydiving.
You can tandem, automatic AED, if you're going above a certain speed at a certain altitude, it automatically deploys your reserve in case you get knocked unconscious. You wear a helmet. You can have 2 altimeters. You can be trained. You can jump the right people. There's like anything in life, there's risk to it, but it's a matter of reducing that risk to an acceptable level for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what cybersecurity is all about, really.
Yeah.
It's not, we can't eliminate all the risks, never, but we can hopefully reduce it to a level where an organization is comfortable with the degree or the residual risk that's left.
Well, it kind of aligns because there's a ton of risk in cyber, cyber attacks.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the last, everybody's hears about it and gets their notices from their credit card company.
Right.
Yeah.
And probably everyone listening has been affected some way from a cyber attack. And so that aligns with your personality of how do you help companies mitigate that. So what do you do? What are you doing today that's really that you see as like, moving the needle to support companies to reduce their risk?
I think combining the emotional intelligence we've been talking about with like the technical aptitude of my company, I think that helps move the needle because we can communicate better.
Right.
I think also focusing on things that I believe to be problematic. Like a lot of people in the industry think we're secure because we have multi-factor authentication, we've got anti-malware, we have these things in place. So we offer penetration testing as a means to validate that security. Kind of like Reagan said, we want to trust but verify. The trust is like, trust we know what we're doing, but let's actually have somebody verify it's working as we intended it to work. And I think it's better to have an ally to that verification than the actual cyber criminal that comes in and hacks your system and installs ransomware or steals your data. So we're doing that, and then also.
So when you go in and do the penetration testing, what percentage of the time, on average, do you end up penetrating?
I would say
or see failures.
95%.
Oh, that's brutal.
It
So,
depends on
so
what
if you
yeah.
tested us, you think that the chances are pretty high that
Is that
you
a
would
challenge here?
you would penetrate it, or you think we're in the 5%?
If you allow us to take the kid gloves off
Yeah.
and use multiple
You'll find
tactics,
something.
I'm like 99% sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you say you can only try to get in through our external firewall, the chances go down, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, the adversary, if they were targeting you, would use multiple avenues to get into your environment. Phishing emails, calls, maybe try to physically plant something in your environment, try to break in from the outside, etc. Or infect somebody's laptop that they break the environment.
Yeah.
So if all those tactics are allowed, I would say it's pretty high.
Can you give us a story or two, or on the stuff that you've seen out there that's just like, wow, I can't believe they like how they got in, or something, what you've seen? And
So I've done a lot of the penetration testing myself. So I've got my own stories from the field or whatever. I remember a bank in California, closer to LA, that I was hired to do a penetration test, and I only was given like a half a day to figure out what I wanted to do. So for that bank, I pretended I was a new employee, but this guy, let's say his name was David, the manager of one branch, hired me, but my target was another branch. And I came up with this like really quickly. So I went to the other branch and told them David asked, before they opened up, I wore a suit. I told them David asked me to stop by to pick up some onboarding paperwork. And the bank was not supposed to let me in because it's before like public hours. But people want to be nice. So the woman let me in. I went in there and she walked me to her desk. I sat in front of her desk and she went to the back to call David, the guy that hired me supposedly. But I looked up David. He's a legitimate person. I knew David wasn't there because of before work hours. So when she left me to go make that call, she wanted to do it in front of me. So she left me at her desk and attended. She had like 6 files on her desk. I took 3 of them, put in my briefcase, and then she came back and she said, I can't get a hold of David, so I can't help you. I don't know what forms to give you. So I said, no problem. So I left and then went and talked to my point of contact. And she said, did you get anything? I said, I got these 3 files. And she's like, well, how'd you do it? And I told her, and she asked me to come back and debrief that woman. So I came back and debriefed that woman, and she's like, oh, you're back. Do you know what you need? And whatever. I'm like, well, I'm not who you think I am.
Right.
And I had to tell her, like, what happened, because she wasn't supposed to let anybody into the building before public hours. She wasn't supposed to have anything on her desk, and she left those files on her desk, which are client information. So I don't really know what happened with that woman, if she got fired or they kept her. I have mixed feelings about that. I think if she was fired, they might have lost an asset. Because she was kept, she might be the biggest advocate for like this sort of training.
Having gone through it and real
gone through
experience.
Yeah.
so that's not even
Yeah.
that's not even anything like through a computer system, or this is just
Compliance.
Yeah. So like penetration testing,
it could be
or
anything.
ethical hacking often involves a physical component as well as logical. There's been hospitals we've been able to get into and plant a device in the hospital network that allows us to remote control the hospital network, and we can compromise everything. Another example where the CISO of the hospital, the CEO actually, wanted to like, she had a big connection with what we did, is we dropped a thumb drive in the hospital, just like in the hallway. We dropped like 5 of them. But on the thumb drive, we put this file, it was an Excel document that said like 23 layoffs, and had names of people in the hospital.
People want to click on that
we found through like open source intelligence or just Google searches, and they're legitimate people in the hospital. But on that document, we made it look like it was secure. So you had to click on this button to unlock the document. When you clicked on that button, it installed our malicious software.
Right.
And we were able to control that computer. So that person that got the thumb drive copied the information to their computer and emailed it to other people. So it affected a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
And the CEO of the hospital was super upset, saying this tactic you used was too realistic. I'm like, did you want us just to like do something silly and not realistic?
Yeah.
Because we ended up infecting like the whole hospital basically.
Right.
And if there's a real adversary, they could have taken over the whole hospital and stolen patient data and things like that.
Yeah. I really love what you guys are doing. I mean, I think especially considering current landscape, and to your point, all of the notifications we get of breach and your information, to be able to be preventative instead of reactive, I think that's a game changer for businesses. Oftentimes, to your point, something has to break or gets broken and we go, oh, we need to look into this. And so to be able to almost do like a health check with you guys and say, hey, before stuff goes bad, before the thing breaks, help us identify where are holes, where are gaps, because then you can implement the training, you can educate your people on what to do and how to handle. And it seems like a no-brainer hearing you, but how many businesses that aren't taking advantage of those type of services? I'm sure it's a ton. So I love that you guys are advocating for that, and that businesses should really obviously take the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. It's much less costly to do it proactively than after an incident.
Yes.
What's your most favorite place you ever traveled?
I would say the Big Island, Hawaii, or Rwanda.
Oh, two totally different places.
The island Hawaii is my favorite place. Like when I die, my ashes are gonna be spread on Mauna Kea and then in Kailua Bay. We talked about Big Island earlier, and then Rwanda. I did I climbed Kilimanjaro. I went to Rwanda ahead of time and did a thing with the gorillas. I trekked and found these gorillas, these wild gorillas. It's like Gorillas in the Mist, the movie.
Yeah.
And it was like super cool to see the gorillas in the wild.
I love that.
And the people in Rwanda are awesome. The food is super spicy. I like spicy food. It's fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's right up your alley with spicy food.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It's a great answer. What was the last song you listened to?
Probably Can't Hold Me, Can't Hold Us by Macklemore.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the last one because of my mind. I've done cryotherapy a couple of times, and I've only done it twice, but I requested that song before I went into the cryo freezer, like negative 160 degrees, just to be able to like put my mind on something else while I'm standing there freezing to death.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. 2 or 3 words on how you describe your leadership style.
Visionary, empathetic, and certain.
Like that.
If you weren't doing this, if this wasn't your current profession, what would you be doing?
I would be taking people on experiences that would change their perspective. I used to do outdoor wilderness survival, like through Bear Grylls, so I might do more of that, or something that I've kind of like curated on my own.
Yeah. Wow. And I assume you would take them to Hawaii or Rwanda. Would that be on the list of places you might take them?
It depends on the experience I want to give. But yeah, those two, or maybe on a hike on a mountain, even like Mount Whitney might be something we're taking them to. Yeah, depends on the experience I want to cultivate for them.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, being cultured and traveling, that's so key to being well-rounded, right?
100%. Yeah, I've been to like 70 countries, and I feel like I got a lot more to go to.
Right.
It's like 210 countries.
Yeah.
70. Wow.
I love that.
All right, last one. Morning routine. What is there? Do you do the same thing every morning?
So I used to have a really good morning routine, but I've kind of fallen off. I'll give you my morning routine that I used to do. I used to get up in the morning and do some sort of exercise, like burpees or some yoga or something. I would take a cold shower, and I would meditate. So I would alternate between like the Calm app and the 6-phase meditation by Vishen Lakhiani, the guy from Mind Valley, which is like more of a creative visualization exercise.
The 6-step or
6-phase
meditation.
Yeah, so I would do that. And
that's a great one.
I am a big fan of the 5-minute journal. So I fill that in the morning about what I'm grateful for, what I want to accomplish in the day, and things of that nature. So it's like a little bit of priming to kind of set the day with some intention.
So how do you get back on it now?
I do parts of it. I took a cold shower yesterday, and I filled out a high performance planner, which is sort of like the intention thing. So it's just a matter of like having a more static routine, because I was in Germany like last week. I've been traveling like nonstop pretty much for like 2 months, I feel like. So yeah,
it's hard when you get off the routine too.
Yeah, it's hard. So I'm incorporating different elements of it, but like last week I was in Belgium for the F1 race, and spent some time in Luxembourg and in Germany as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, nice.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. What's next for Christian?
What's next? Well, I am building my cybersecurity company, my new one, Blue Goat Cyber. I'm about to launch my second book called The In-Between Life in the Micro. It's about sort of being present, but it's more like if you're a high achiever, we've always got our goal, our mind on this goal up here. And we often skip the things in between where we are in that goal, which I call the micro moments, because we're so hyper focused on the outcome of the big goal. So my book is more of a focused memoir around where I feel like I've messed things up by being so hyper focused on achievements and outcomes, and where I've got things right. Because sometimes stepping back and being in the moment can actually inform you, like, this is not the direction I really want to go.
Yeah.
So those two things.
So is that like celebrating the journey?
Yeah, it's kind of celebrating the journey with some intention. Yeah, it's more than just like smelling the roses. It's more like having some intention behind that. You know, you can't just wander around and smell the roses your whole life. There has to be a balance between the macro and the micro, and that's really what the book is about, that balance.
Right.
Okay.
So
Really exciting.
those, and then like reclaiming my health. I had last year I had blood clots and almost died in February. So
Oh my
I'm on
gosh.
this journey to like get everything figured out. I've done a half Ironman like 50 days ago, and I canceled a full Ironman because I don't know if I have any remaining clots in my left leg. So I got to get an ultrasound, call it a Doppler ultrasound, to just confirm that. But I've been doing things like NAD therapy and other things to like help with that as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we hope that works out for you. We want to see you get, I don't know, get to 30 Ironmans at this point.
I got mountains I want to climb. I got cool things I want to do.
You're
yeah.
2 of 7, so you've got some more summits, right?
Yeah. 5 more. Yeah.
5 more, yeah.
Yeah.
We want to see you get there.
Super.
So this is the part where we ask you about reflecting back on your journey. And now you're talking to your younger self. What kind of advice now, given what you know today, would you give to younger Christian?
I would tell younger Christian to go for what he knew, or I know what my inner knowing was, my gut, my I like to call it inner knowing, what I knew to be true much sooner, because I didn't have stability. I didn't have any of that stuff growing up. So I craved safety and stability when I got out of my environment. And that safety and stability ended up being like the thing that was like sucking my soul out of me, you know, ironically. And I knew that, but I didn't have it, so I craved it. So I worked jobs and I worked with people and I did things I didn't want to do because of that safety and stability like pull. Even though I knew like that I didn't want to do it. There'll be days I'll be driving to work and I'll be like, I'm just gonna keep driving. I'm not gonna get off the interstate. I'm just gonna drive and start my life over because I'm unhappy doing this. But I'm like, you know, I didn't have the courage then to take a different step. So I had the inner knowing. No, I knew if I tuned in myself, I knew I should have been an entrepreneur earlier. I should take the risk, the steps. But for some reason, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still feel after all your success that it's not enough? Like whether it's financial or
That's the demons in my head. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like
I'm only saying that because I'm relating with you.
no.
Right
A lot of times I feel like I've achieved all this stuff. It's enough. I can just relax.
Yeah.
And I tried it when I left the parent company that I sold mine to. I tried relaxing for like 3 months, and I drove up and down the PCH, went and watched Nightwish, my favorite band, went to Hawaii for a while, just took it easy, and then after a while I started feeling empty. I felt like I need to be doing something, I need to be building something, I need to be like you know, hiring a team, I need to be growing. So it was like I don't think it's ever enough. You know, I think you just have, at least for me, I have that thirst for like growing and for building something and for doing something and for trying to have a bigger impact on the world. You know, that's who I am.
Yeah.
And to try to like, you know, put a lid on that and say just relax and hang out at the beach, drink Mai Tais, that works for a little while, but after a while that thing comes back. I want to like go back and try to build something and better. Yeah.
Well, you seem to fulfill your personal bucket with all your risk taking and adventuring and whatnot. So maybe you've kind of found that stride to growing and having an impact both personally and professionally. So you feel more fulfilled.
I think so. I often contemplate my life. I feel like if I died tomorrow or today or whatever, I've given it all. Like, you know, I've have a good balance of, you know, doing the things I want to do, building a business, taking trips, traveling, you know, going all in relationships, not holding back on a lot of things. And I feel like that's important. My grandparents wanted to like wait until they retired to do stuff, but then my grandfather died like a year after they retired.
Oh.
So they never did all the stuff they wanted to do, and I've tried to like do the opposite.
Right.
Maybe to excess, but I feel like I've balanced it pretty good.
Yeah.
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 That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, do it now, right? Do some of it now. You keep
It's
kicking
hard to
it
do
off,
when you get older.
postponing
It's
it.
hard to climb a mountain when you're like 70 years
Yeah.
old versus when you're in your 40s or 50s.
Well, or 38. I think I'd find it harder to climb up.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, so what's Christian's secret sauce? I mean, what is it that makes you unique?
I think what makes me unique is I am super driven to improve myself. So I like to put myself in situations that are uncomfortable because it's going to force me to grow. And I also, and it's taken me a while to get here, over the past 15, 20 years, I've shifted my perspective to more of giving back versus taking. So I think it's important to mentor people, to show them what they're capable of, to make people realize they're much more capable than they think they are, and to kind of help a different generation tackle entrepreneurship or realize that they can do things that they may not have thought they could do.
Yeah.
So that to me is a big motivator these days as well, and that's why I like to have a team. And I have no qualms if my team, like, if somebody on my team wants to go start their own business, that's great. I'll help them. I think that's awesome. I don't think they're betraying me or anything. I think I have succeeded because I've made someone have the appetite to do what they really want to do.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I value
love
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
So where can people find you now? Like whether they're a business that's looking for cybersecurity or they're looking for you to speak at an event or to coach, where do they find you?
So for cybersecurity, they can go to bluegoatcyber.com. And then for everything else, they can go to christianespinosa.com. And I'm on social media, so is Blue Goat Cyber as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah,
this
thanks
is
for
awesome.
having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem.
That's so awesome.